A new mandatory evacuation order is in place for the Aspen Acres Fire as it continues to burn in Pueblo and Custer counties. It is 61% contained, but we know it's already burned more than 100,000 acres. More than 1,300 firefighters, meanwhile, remain on the lines as hot, dry, and windy conditions continue to challenge crews. Investigators determined that the cause of the fire, the cause of the Aspen Acres Fire, was human, but they haven't specifically said how it started. Even though it is still burning and we don't know the exact cause, a lawsuit has been filed blaming San Isabel Electric for starting the fire. 9 News legal expert Whitney Traylor here this morning to talk more about this. Again, let's start with the crux of the lawsuit itself. What exactly is the complaint here?
The complaint is really simply put who is responsible for this fire and thereby the resulting damages. And so these 4 property owners just on July 15th filed the lawsuit against San Isabel Electric saying that they were in fact responsible. But what's interesting about this, Drew, is they've identified these witnesses who I think have fairly compelling testimony. Now, San Isabel hasn't responded yet, but the complaint says that there was one witness that saw a tree on the power line, another witness saw an explosion in that area, and then another witness, or maybe it was the same witness, has video of the fire starting in that place. So you can obviously deduce that it seems like that's a reasonable conclusion that that's how the fire started, and that's what the allegation is.
So it's not just a case of we think you started this fire, it's hey, we've got some physical evidence that suggests you are to blame.
Right. Yeah, that's what they're saying, but it's still so early on. So I mean, the fire's not even contained yet.
Right.
So we don't know the extent of the damages, and there's been no investigation that's been completed yet.
It hasn't been contained. We don't know the official cause. They're saying it's human cause, but
Yes.
they haven't said exactly how, investigators that is. So is this too early to file a lawsuit, or is there some sort of legal advantage, strategy, if you will, to starting that file now?
Well, I think it's not necessarily who's first to the courthouse, but it's who's first to the evidence. And so here I think you're seeing that these lawyers are trying to get ahead of the evidence. Now they can say to San Isabel, hey, you have to preserve this information. You have to preserve any evidence. If you don't, you could suffer spoliation sanctions is what it's called when you have spoliation of evidence. So that's one effort, I think, in terms of the lawyers not making any judgment, but they being the first firm to now represent these folks. There's going to be a number of other plaintiffs, I'm sure, so now they're ahead of the game in terms of having access to those clients, because it would make sense that they go with, in some instances, to go with this law firm, and maybe it ends up being a class action.
I was going to ask you about that. I think you said at the beginning there are 4 victims, if you will, involved in this lawsuit.
Yeah.
What does this mean for others? We know there's more victims than that with this fire. It's been huge. What does it mean for those victims?
Well, this is a bellwether case. So this is the first case. There is going to be many. So this allows people to really see if any early motions are successful and the case gets dismissed for some reason or another. I doubt that would happen. But this gives others an opportunity to see what's going on with the case. And then, of course, they can join it. And as I said, there's strategy in terms of having a class action, because the point of a class action is because there's so many similar facts and similar witnesses that it's judicially efficient to just do it at once.
Okay.
But if you have all these individual lawsuits, is that more pressure on San Isabel to settle rather than have these 100 individual lawsuits? So that's some of the strategies that they're thinking about.
Let's talk about the other side of the story. You just mentioned the San Isabel Electric. Yeah. They haven't come out and formally responded to this yet.
Right.
But what do you think their strategy would be as far as defense goes in a lawsuit like this?
Well, I think the first response is pretty obvious, which is the investigation hasn't started. We don't know who started this fire, and it's premature to say that it was us.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be the primary argument. And then I think they're also going to say the extreme wind was the cause, so it wasn't an act of negligence, but it was an act of nature. That's generally a defense that will come up. So again, you know, the fire's not contained. We have to see what the investigation comes out with. And of course, both parties can also get their own independent investigation, which gets really expensive, and that could come up with contradictory evidence from the official investigation. So long way to go.
Again, the Aspen Acres Fire is still burning. We will continue to track evacuation orders and containment of that fire. And I'm sure, Whitney, you'll be tracking this lawsuit and any potential damages.
Yes, I'll be back.
All right, man. Thanks for joining us here today.
All right, sure.
We're back with more 9 News Mornings right after this.